Why is scarcity important in money?
Well, I think scarcity just has this very high correlation to value across all assets, not just money, right? Money happens to be the unit of account that we use in terms of daily commerce. But whether it is, as we're seeing now, sneakers, art, whatever it is, scarcity ultimately is that signal of value, I think. And that's just been the way that humans derive value for literally, thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, I got to say, that's my view on life and love in general. Is scarcity is what makes it valuable. People talk about immortality. I would like to be immortal, but it does seem that when you let go of the finiteness of life, I feel like that meals and the experiences you have get devalued significantly. Like the longer you live, the less value there are in infinity if you live forever. I worry that all the meaning will dissipate. And the same thing with love, a quick criticism of sort of dating culture and all that kind of stuff. I believe that scarcity in dating and interaction is like intensifies the value of when the interactions do happen. So when love does happen. And so in that sense, there's something magical about scarcity in the more subjective, psychological, social world as well. And perhaps money is just another version of that, right? It's all about the stories and ideas we tell ourselves.
I think they're actually more interconnected than you're giving it credit for, right? Which is, what is money? Money is time, ultimately, right? The pursuit of the acquisition of money, right? Of whether it's a currency or true money, is because that should give you more time. Mm. And so one of my favorite movies ever is, and it's funny because Justin Timberlake is in it, is this movie In Time.
You lost me. In Time?
In Time. And basically the premise of the movie is that everyone has a clock that's embedded into their arm. And so if you go to work, you basically put your arm underneath when you leave, and there's time that's deposited into your clock. And if your clock ever hits all zeros, you're dead. Mm-hmm. You die on the spot. And so there's a number of scenes where people are basically running, to get to you, and I give you a little bit more time so that you can get to work on Monday, and then you work to acquire time. And so basically time becomes this currency. But what becomes very fascinating about it is there are sections in society where literally there's physical places. If you only have, let's say, 72 hours or less, you're allowed to go to section 1. Section 5, though, is because you have years and years and years on your clock. And in this movie, everyone at the age of 25 freezes from a biological aging standpoint. Mm-hmm. So everyone stays the same, but you may have lived for 1,000 years. And so what becomes so fascinating about it is that rich people have time, poor people do not have time. And so in it, Justin Timberlake, the main character, at one point essentially acquires a bunch of time. And he's able to go to one of the higher levels. And now he's attending all these galas and, poker nights and all this stuff. And one of the first things that he learns is that in the lower end of society, everyone is running everywhere at all times in the movie because time is so finite and it is so scarce. And so therefore, why would I walk down the street? I must run down the street. In the highest level of society, no one runs anywhere. And in fact, if you run, you are seen as lower class.
Yeah.
Because wealth is time. And so that movie is, it's got a ton of kind of things that you can pull out of it. But to me is the perfect epitome of money is time. And so when you start to think about the acquisition of money, right, it goes to this whole idea of time billionaire. And I know that there's probably a lot of people who have heard about this already. But if you think of 1 million seconds, it's about 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. And so if I said to somebody, you have to switch lives with Warren Buffett, would you do it? Some people would say, sure. That'd be their initial reaction. I said, but you have to be, 92 years old. Is the money worth the lack of time? Most people would say no, right? And there's this guy, Graham Duncan, who really articulated this well. And ultimately what ends up happening is you realize time is more valuable than the money. But you acquire the money to gain more time.
And the reason it's valuable is because of the scarcity of time. We currently have the biology, the physics, means that this is not just a narrative we tell ourselves. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it feels like pretty sure we're mortal. And in that sense, the scarcity there gives value to time. It's fascinating to think about all the thought experiments here of if that could actually be on the economy, if you can actually convert time in a frictionless way to money.
Well, and if you start to pull on this a little bit and say, okay, a young person today, let's say somebody in their 20s, has about 2 billion seconds left in their life, right? Kind of 60 years, give or take, based on life expectancy. They usually, until they start to understand this concept, think of wealth in dollar terms. But dollars are being devalued. And so, $1 million doesn't get you what it used to get, right? It's kind of an old adage. And so what you're doing is you're pursuing something that ends up losing value. And so it's the constant rat race. It's how do I constantly try to get more? How do I get more dollars? How do I get more dollars? Because even if I say to myself, I'm going to retire when I get $100,000. When I get the $100,000, the $100,000 5 years from now doesn't buy me what I thought it did. So now I need 500,000 or 200,000 or $1 million or whatever the number is. And so ultimately what ends up occurring is that the Bitcoin community and many people in kind of this idea of sound money is you want to be able to acquire an asset that not only will hold the value, right, the store of value over time, but it will actually appreciate over time. And so when you look at something like Bitcoin against the dollar, against other types of assets, all of these assets are down compared to Bitcoin, right? Now, some of that's just in the early days of kind of the pricing of an asset. You go from very small to something much larger. But now what you start to look at is, well, if you have a finite supply of something, what ends up happening is people begin to value it more. And so in a world where dollars are infinite and other fiat currencies are infinite, Bitcoin becomes very, very interesting, very special, and something that is very aspirational. And so I think that's where you're starting to see people say, wait a second, this is something where that finite, secure store of value is essential to wealth generation and preservation over a long period of time.